This is not the figure of a strange pagan god. It is the figure of a man, an awakened man, a Buddha. And I expect you may have wondered why almost all figures of Buddha or of many other Eastern saviors which you see are seated like this. This figure of Buddha is in a posture of meditation, and the way in which he is seated and the whole path of his figure in his expression symbolize a certain attitude to life, a certain way of looking at things, which in Indian and Chinese philosophy is considered essential to sanity. Perhaps I can give you some idea of the meaning of this attitude by demonstrating it with a term character, a word which represents this whole attitude to life. Most of you probably know that Chinese characters are originally picture writers. And in this particular character, this part of the character is said originally to have represented some water bird, perhaps a stork or a crane. And this other part of the character is just called a sign meaning the human eye. You only put legs on it, the activity of the eye, and that means seeing. And the whole character is pronounced one. And it means a certain kind of observation, a certain way of looking at things which might be typified by the image of a heron standing at the edge of the water, as in this painting, which is by the great Japanese artist Ano Motonobu. There is the heron standing quietly and serenely, watching the water. And so, the whole meaning of this attitude to life is what is summed up in the entire Eastern idea of meditation typified in these Buddha figures. And I want to try today to explain to you something of the meaning of this attitude to life. For fundamentally, meditation is not so much an exercise as it is a certain way of using one's mind or one's consciousness. Because normally, most human beings, when they use their eyes or their ears, are constantly and chronically straining to see and to hear. And when you come to think of it, that's very odd, because our eyes don't work by effort. They don't have to go out and get the light. The light comes to them. And in the same way, sound comes to our ears. And even the sense of touch comes to our fingertips. We don't, for example, have to press the thing hard. If I want in the dark, I'm trying to something and feel what this is. I don't have to press very hard to feel. Because the sensation simply of the hard object comes to the nerve end in my skin. And so it's strange, isn't it, that we have acquired the habit of a constant and chronic effort to see clearly and to hear clearly. I think part of it comes from school. You know, when children are listening to a teacher in class, they're always doing something like this, you know, looking around, and twisting and jiggling. And the teacher says, pay attention! And the children immediately, who ingratiate the teacher, are able to sort of plan or act what paying attention is like. And paying attention is what's especially to teacher. That's very interesting what you say. And sometimes, to get their concentration clear, they curl up their legs round the legs of the chair, and go through all these strange attitudes, so that the teacher knows they really are trying very hard to attend. And it is through such conditioning, through being taught that we must try to see and try to hear in order to have clear sight and clear hearing, that we learn constantly to strain our senses in their use. But as a matter of fact, this impedes the clarity of our senses, because if you will try staring hard at a book in front of you, or staring very hard at the TV screen you're looking at right now, you will find that it becomes fuzzy. Also, in the same way, if you're trying to listen, say, to a telephone conversation while the children are running all over the house and screaming, if you try to listen to the telephone, you'll get very angry and you'll have to stop to yell at the children to make them be quiet. But on the other hand, if you just let the sound come to your ears, you'll have no difficulty at all in hearing. So, you remember then that heron, actually. When that heron was watching the fish, it wasn't so, you're not listening to the fish, we're going to fish up, we just know, and fish. And as it were, the whole
Good, thank you.
will simply come to the same time.
Yes,
and
fast.
as long as it sees a ripple in the water, it starts down and gets the fish. Now, I don't think it's only that we have been taught by teachers and parents and so on to try to see, try to hear. There are other factors in the problem. And one of them is that while we are seeing and hearing, we are trying to make sense of our world by thinking about it. And the act of thinking also introduces an element of strain into the use of our mind. And I think the reason for this is, perhaps you will remember how I showed you on a previous program, that thought is linear. You know, it goes one word after another. It's strung out in a line. We think thought in a line like this, one after another. Whereas when we see to what is going on entirely. We take in a volume when we see. We take in a great area. Nature is a volume, rather than something strung out in a line. But when we think, we get one thought after another. And so the process of thought is much slower than the process of seeing and using our consciousness or our mind as a whole. And this then requires a certain effort to make thought keep up with what we are seeing or what we are hearing. Also, you see, thought works by abstraction. What do I mean by abstraction? Well, a lot of Chinese characters are abstractions. If we take, for example, the Chinese character for man, was written this way. Now, that was originally the head and legs of a human figure, something like this, when we draw an abstract figure of a man, everybody knows that's a man. But as a matter of fact, it cuts out a great deal of man. This figure cuts out all the details and gives us a simple image which we can grasp all at once. And we have to do that in order to think, so that we can use a series of very simple images or grasps of the world, and these are abstractions. It is fundamentally in terms of abstractions that we think. Now,
My pants get in the way.
thought, as I said, is slower because it goes in a line, thought after thought. And also thought is abstract. That is to say, it lacks the full living quality of real life, just as this figure here is just a sort of skeleton, a ball on top of sticks, and therefore it lacks the vitality, the aliveness of a real man. Now, the more we tend to live in a world of thought, the more we tend to live in an abstract world that is removed from and has a gap between it and the real world of nature. And as a result of this, we tend to live in a world that is in some ways unsatisfied, lacking in vitality and life. And also, people tend to think all the time. This becomes, for every civilized community, every civilized person, a sort of habit, which is like constantly talking to yourself. Now, of course, when you meet me, I'm always talking.
You're looking this way.
Almost always. But I assure you, I'm not always talking. I'm often silent. Because after all, we have to be silent some of the time, don't we? In order to hear what other people have to say, and therefore to have something to talk about. In just the same way, our minds have to be silent some of the time if we are really to have anything to think about except thoughts. You know, there is a popular proverb which says that talking to yourself is the first sign of madness. And there's some truth in this. Because constant thinking, as distinct from simply experiencing through our senses, constant thinking about our experiences, coding our experiences into words, into signs, into the
Not to stretch, like, to do that one.
It's a buzz that goes on day in, day out inside our heads, except when we're asleep. And as a result of that, we begin to live in a world increasingly divorced from reality. And that is why in those Oriental cultures in India and China and Japan, it has always been considered important for everybody to spend some of his time, by no means all of his time, but some of it, not thinking, but simply in the attitude which was represented by that Chinese character which I drew at the beginning, pronounced one or quiet observation. Remember this point, it's important. This is not saying that thinking is a disturbance, is a thing that human beings shouldn't do. On the contrary, it's a highly important acquisition of man. But thinking is of no real value to us unless we also can practice non-thinking, unless we can have our minds silent and make immediate contact with the real world as distinct from the world of pure abstraction. And so this leads to a very common practice in Asia, among Hindus, among Buddhists, among Taoists, called meditation. And I want to try to show you something about it. By sitting in the posture of meditation, which is commonly used, and is done approximately
But
like
we'll have to get further.
one sits upon a firm cushion. Usually, a big city telephone directory is about the right thickness. And ordinarily, among Oriental peoples, they sit in what is called lotus posture, or half lotus posture, as I'm sitting now, which means that the right foot is lifted up onto the left thigh. You will find, of course, that that's an extraordinarily uncomfortable position if you're not used to it. But one of the reasons for sitting that way is that it locks your legs together so that you don't usually fall over if you go to sleep. And also that
Like,
this position gives you a sense
kind of
being
incorporate
very
really old kung
firm
fu strikes with boxing.
And then the hands are laid like this. And one then turns attention to letting oneself breathe. You don't do a breathing exercise, it's taking deep inhalations and exhalations. You simply let your breath come as it wants to. But you, if anything, let the out-breath, the breath that goes to the sigh of relief. You let that be the emphasized breath rather than the in-breath. You don't close your eyes, you usually drop them a little on the floor in front of you. Because the object is not to cut out all the things that you might be experiencing through your eyes and through your ears, through your nose and your nerve ends on the skin. The object is simple. To let one's mind alone. To experience, but not to try to catch hold of one's experience in thoughts. Simply to think. No, I wouldn't say think.
This leg sidekick's definitely weak.
Very ambiguous.
I have a weaker sidekick on my
I mean, talk to yourself.
right side.
Or bring along images before your mind which have nothing to do with what's right in front of you. So, the function of this exercise with posture is to let the whole world come to you without interfering with it in any way, just sitting like that. You may say, oh, that's a great waste of time. There are all sorts of interesting things in life to do. Why just spend some hours sitting? And the reason, though, as I try to explain, is that it is through this that one comes to have a contact no longer with the world of abstractions, no longer with the world of thought, but with the world that actually is. Now, as you do this, you begin to notice a rather curious change in your general feeling of life. You notice that there ceases to be what I would call an interruption or an interval between your experience and yourself. You see, in our ordinary way of using our minds, the chronic sense of strain, the chronic attempt to think about and make sense of what we are feeling is what we call our ego. If you say, I experience my own existence, I am aware constantly of a knower, behind and receiving all that is known, then you get this chronic sensation of there being an I, a self, who has all these experiences, and that I, or self, is what we call the ego. And this chronic sense of strain is our, you might call it our psychological blocking against our experience. The thing that seems to divide us from an external world, from the whole universe. But when in this way the interval begins to diminish, we begin to experience our world as ourselves. There is no interval, there is no interruption between the knower and the knower. Just as when we are completely absorbed listening to music or dancing to music, we are not aware of our separation from it. We go right with it. And so, in the same way, when the mind responds instantly to what the senses bring, it seems almost as if the mind and what it experiences were one and the same. Now, in a way, of course, this is actually true. We can understand this theoretically, but we don't ordinarily really feel it. For example, you know the old saying, if a tree falls in a forest with nobody listening to it, will there be any noise? to know the limits in which this problem is posed. There was a young man who said, God, I find it exceedingly odd that a tree, as a tree, simply ceases to be when there's no one around to plug. And the answer was, young man, your astonishment found. I'm always around in the quad. So the tree, as a tree, never ceases to be since observed by your faithful God. But this is a great philosophical puzzle for the Western world. Does what we know depend on there being a knower? Now, in a way, obviously it does. Because when a tree falls in the forest, it certainly makes vibrations in the air. But those vibrations in the air do not become noise unless they vibrate an eardrum. So in the same way, the light from the sun does not become light unless it falls on an eye, an eyeball. And
I'm gonna take my glasses off.
we could say the
See Kung Fu.
world is full of hard things. But nothing is hard except in relation to the soft surface of the human skin. Nothing is heavy except in relation to human muscles. So if there is not a human organism, the world does not appear to us at all as having any of the characteristics which we attach to an external world. In other words, we could say, the sun is light, but only because of eyes. Rocks are hard, but only because of soft fingers. Falling rocks are noisy, but only because of sensitive human ears. We cannot form any idea at all of what the world would be like without an observing mind. Even such things as duration, the span of time, depends upon the human mind to appreciate. Space depends on the human mind to observe.
Where city do I live? Oh, I can't tell you, bro. Not allowed to tell you. We can just say I'm from Brock Lease Village, O Block. Lease Village, O Block.
In a very clear way, that our mind and the external world go together. They are inseparable differences. You remember in a recent program how I tried to illustrate the idea of inseparable differences by taking quite an object here like a cigar, which has two distinct ends, but you cannot separate those ends. This is very important. It's worth repeating because it's quite fundamental. If I would want to take one of these ends off and break the thing and throw it away, it would still have another end. There would still be two ends there. I could never get rid of the situation of it having two ends. So you see that although the two ends are different, there is just one other. And so in the same way, although there is a difference in the way,
Stepped away. Thank you.
Man and the world, nevertheless,
Yes, thank you for understanding. G-Best.
And therefore, when our consciousness is responding instantly, without any interval or interruption, without any, shall we say, stopping to think about it, then we have a situation in which we are actually realizing, we are actually feeling the true physical relationship which exists between man and his environment. And this we could call the experience of oneness or unity with the universe, which is the function.
It's a little bit different.
Now,
When it's not boxing, it changes. It changes everything when it's not boxing.
I think it's not difficult to see some very obvious
But I don't know. But it's also good.
because, well, if we live entirely in a world of thought, all the things that we pursue in life tend in a way to become arid and unsatisfactory, because we are living in an abstract world. In other words, Nobody in his
That would have been
senses is
weeks
going
off.
to eat a menu instead of dinner. Nobody in his senses is going to try and get a satisfactory diet of dollar bills. And yet, you see, dollar bills and menus stand in the same relation, on the one hand, to wealth, on the other hand, to dinner. The same relation in which thought stands to reality.
Throw a couple kung fu punches in there.
They symbolize reality, but they are in no sense substitutions for it. Yes,
Okay,
you
here.
can do a great deal of things if you have a lot of dollar bills. But unless you exchange those dollar bills into real concrete wealth, they are of no value to you. And so in the same way, if we
Those are
try
easily combinable kung fu
to
punches.
live in the world of pure thought, we begin to feel strange, unsatisfactory qualities of the world. And this living in pure thought is not something that is only done by, professors and intellectuals and thinking people. Perfectly ordinary people often live in the world of pure thought. As, for example, when we pursue certain goals in life, when we say, I want to be successful, I want to be happy, these are really abstractions. Because supposing you become enormously wealthy and you are able to afford 3 cars and 6 houses, you can't drive in 3 cars at once. You can't live in 6 houses at once. You have a symbol, which we call prestige, of your status. But that is an abstract symbol. You can't eat prestige. You can't eat success. And so, to overcome that kind of beguilement by the fantasies of thought, not thinking, is an important adjunct to thought. To be able, every so often, to cease the hubbub going on inside one's head, and to let talking to oneself stop and come to stillness. You needn't, of course, sit in a meditation posture like this. You do it simply the way it's done by Buddhists and Hindus. You can walk, you can sit in the ordinary way, you can lie in the bathtub and do it. You can lie on your back in bed before you get up in the morning and do it. Just let your mind alone and stop trying to make sense of the world. So, there is really something to think about other than thought itself. Like if we wrote books about nothing but books, this is, I'm afraid, what a great deal of scholarship is. Books about books about books. And so in this way, through meditation, we come to that kind of profound peace which is exhibited in the faces of the Buddha. I remember particularly some words by Lafcadio Hearn, in which he gives a marvelous description of the whole attitude which these faces represent. Each eidolon shaped by human faith remains the shell of a truth eternally divine, and even the shell itself may hold a ghostly power. The soft serenity, the passionless tenderness of these Buddha faces might yet give peace of soul to a West weary of creeds transformed into conventions, eager for the coming of another teacher to proclaim. I have the same feeling for the high as for the low, for the moral as for the immoral, for the depraved as for the virtuous, for those holding sectarian views and false opinions, as for those whose beliefs are good and true.
Shadow boxing hooks versus how I'm actually going to hit people with hooks is way different.
And scholars are naturally disposed to believe that a great deal of the history is pure revenue. But there was supposed to be, many thousand years ago, a great sage emperor by the name of Fu, who was followed in due course by a king whose
I need
name
something
was
to drink. I need something to drink.
And Fu is said to have looked around and studied nature, and to have felt the forces of it, and to have invented what I call the R or the 8 trigrams. Now you see, if you will arrange yang and yin, which are represented by broken and unbroken lines. Unbroken lines for yang, broken lines for yin. If you combine these in groupings of 3, you have 8 possible combinations. For example, 3 yang lines which are unbroken will then represent what the Chinese call Qi or heaven.
We'll do this thing.
3 broken lines, being all yang, all female, will therefore represent the opposite of heaven, which is earth. 2 broken lines on either side of one unbroken line will represent water. And the opposite arrangement, 2 unbroken lines on either side of one broken one will represent fire. And so on until you get 8 fundamental elements. And the idea is, you see, that it represents 8 elements of the process of nature. Now, we used to say in the West, before the pre-scientific age, there were 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and earth. And we got this from India. The Indians add another one, actually, called akash, which is space. We say now that is pre-scientific rubbish. Because actually there are how many elements today? 90-something in established from chemistry. But it's the same sort of thing as saying there are 3 primary colors, so many colors in the spectrum, so many notes in the scale. It is simply that in order to describe nature, you have to divide it up somehow. For example, in classifying people, there are various schemes that have been worked out. We talk about there being extroverts and introverts, and we're all made up of 4 functions, so that we should describe intuitive types, sensation types, thinking types, and feeling types. Sheldon has his own special way, where he can talk about ectomorphs, mesomorphs, and endomorphs, and then have them variously cerebrotonic, somatotonic, and viscerotonic. And you could combine these 3 in various ways. Now, a man like Aldous Huxley is quite obviously a cerebrotonic ectomorph, long, skinny, intellectual. But if you look at any of these sort of classifications, you can always find flaws in them. They never really fit. And so in the same way, the say political classifications that we have don't really fit people, because their opinions are always too complicated unless they're quite strict to be able to be fitted into any of these divisions in a precise way. But nevertheless, you can't do without classification of this sort. You can't do without spectra. And that's the sort of thing that we would bring classification is based on. Now then, that was Cauchy, who was supposed to have invented these things. And there is another legend that he saw these trigrams by keeping the shell of a tortoise into a crack, and then studying the cracks. In the same way, Leonardo da Vinci used to go to a filthy old wall where there were all sorts of bird droppings and scratches and markings, and he would do a Rorschach drawing, and he would see a great battle scene, and this would be an inspiration for painting. Now this is the same thing that you do when you gaze in a crystal ball, or when you look into a deep pool of ink. There are all sorts of ways of what is called divining. To divine is to consult the oracle. Like, it's like a word. To divine, you see there's a subject called divinity, which is to do with descriptions. So to divine is to study the oracle, just as Wittgenstein wanted to make a word out of philosophy. Philosophy is also to do philosophy. Philosophy isn't just a subject, it's an activity. And so to divine is to call upon the unconscious. Instead of thinking something out in a logical way, you allow your imagination to flow into something that is useful for an oracle, whether it's a Rorschach blot or a crystal ball, or a hexagram alphabetic code. For after Cauchy, King 1 combined the 8 trigrams And there are obviously 64 possible combinations of 8. And so the book of changes is simply the setting out of the 64 hexagrams
Have to be careful.
with a combination.
This
And
it's
when
like
you
for
are
muscle
beginning
pains
in the art
and
of
joint
book of
pains
changes, you need the book.
and
You
bone
look up the
pains.
combination to help you find out what the hexagram means. But when you are an expert, you don't need the book. You simply feel the meaning of these combinations of two elements. Now the theory of the book of changes is a very curious thing. But it's related to Diminishing, that is to say the mutual interpenetration of all things in space. And is based on the idea that anything that happens at this moment will be related to this moment because it's in the context of this moment. Therefore, the way I would do something at random at this time will be what we call a sign of the times, or a manifestation of what we Germans call the Zeitgeist, the spirit of the time, the mind of the time. Another way of putting it would be the configuration of the time. And it's in the same way that, for example, astrologers cast what is called a horoscope. That is to say, as of the moment, what are the stars? What is, in other words, the configuration of the universe? And so, in exactly the same way, the New Green philosophy is based on the idea that how one randomly selects the yarrow stalk, or these sticks, or tosses coins, in a given situation, and you might define the situation by asking a question, that random pattern of falls will be related to the situation, and you can divine something about the situation from it. I remember a Zen master, who used to use the Yu-Jin, he had another way. He would take anything. He took, for example, one day a bowl of flowers, and he looked at the pattern, the arrangement of the flowers, and derived a hexagram from the pattern. And from that, he told us about the mood of the arrangement of things. Now, of course, this is all, from our scientific point of view, unverified, and maybe unverified. And of course, the scientific person concludes this kind of thing. Because he says, that's not the way to go about deciding what to do in an important situation. But when you have to decide upon action in an important situation, what you do if you're a scientifically minded person is you study all the relevant data. And you get information. And then on the basis of that information and past experience and previous scientific studies of behavior, you decide how this situation is likely to turn out. But there is a very serious problem with this. It is not any use for practical purposes. It is only applicable in trivial situations, which are highly controlled in an experimental way. For example, in the old times when you went to the doctor, he would look at you, prod you, and smell you, and come up with some feeling about what was the matter. No doctor will do that today. They say that they can't move unless they take innumerable tests. See? So you're tested and measured precisely. Then they come back and they think about it. But you know, they still don't know what to do. Because there comes a point in any decision-making process where you have to act on hunch. How do you know when you've gotten enough data about any situation? When to call a halt? Because you can go on collecting data forever. There are always infinitely many variables in any situation whatsoever, and especially in the human situation. So ultimately, you don't give yourself. You are always deciding on hunch what you're going to do. Even the best informed person ultimately comes to a leap of intuition before making a decision. So then, when you really don't know which way to decide on a certain thing, people say, flip a coin. You know, you can always read Christians on this because the disciples of Jesus cast lots. make a decision. But we're always doing it. Fundamentally, you're always at the point where you don't decide for what we call purely rational reason. So then, flipping the coin gives you two possibilities, yes or no. Now, let's suppose you have an 8-sided coin. And 6-sided dice is a little bit richer. Instead of giving you only two possibilities, here you've got a possibility of variation.
Thank you.
Now let's consider a 64-sided coin. That's what you've got here. Now, again, when you get the oracle, it is never terribly specific. Although sometimes, in your given situation, it seems to be absolutely specific when you consult it. But on the other hand, you use it like theologians use the Bible. That is to say, they read into it anything they want to find. Only, you mustn't do this deliberately. You have to let your own unconscious processes read the oracle for you and decide what it means. In other words, you use the oracle like an orthodox. And the wisdom of that is this, that your brain, if it is your brain, nobody really knows. You see, just to put something in parentheses, it is the brain who knows. Some say yes, some say no. One would think that the structure of the brain has something to do with the structure of thought. But on the other hand, it may not, in the same sense that the structure of a radio has nothing to do with the message that comes in. Although Marshall McLuhan says, he belongs to the other school, that the medium itself is the message. What is the relationship, for example, between the grid pattern of a newspaper photograph and the picture? The same grid pattern can convey anything, so there seems to be a complete irrelevance between the two. But on the other hand, there is not quite as much irrelevance as you might think, because any picture reproduced by this method has some connection with a time and with a technology that can produce this method. It's a rather roundabout connection, nothing. But nevertheless, from a big point of view, it's a very close connection. Depends what
almost popped so badly. Oh my lord. What was that? Thank you. I'm laying on my deck drinking beer. That's funny. Hey, enjoy your time, man. Honestly, not one's better than the other if you're enjoying it, I think.
Which you don't understand, and which is much smarter than you. Because you see, whatever it is that is the mind, the brain, or whatever, I don't care what you call it, it takes care of ever so many things at once that you could never possibly think of consciously. You can't resolve it consciously to regulate your glands.
Sometimes I don't get the footwork part right. I feel... There we go, that's a little better.
It is regulating it. Your nervous system...
But I don't want to lean back too much either. I'm trying to lean
anything about it.
at the same spot.
Because when you look consciously, we by no means notice all that our eyes see. But your mind, your brain, registers everything that is input to your eyes. So genius in thinking is fundamentally based on being able to trust your own mind.
Here, extend, step.
And not confuse your mind with the content of conscious perception. The content of conscious perception is a tiny fraction.
Thank you for sharing that.
What's going on around. You can train yourself to be more receptive than you are in ordinary consciousness. But this isn't quite the point. It is not like how many things did you notice? You know how you can play a game with children when they become boring in the car and they get out a cab and write down how many things you noticed as you went along. Scouts, for example. But that's not the point here. The point here is not how much did you notice. Because there's no end to that. You can play that game and there are infinitely many things that you could notice. The point is to take them all in one glance. And you can't do that with conscious attention. If you do it with your basic neurological or mental equipment, whatever you want to do. So therefore, you have at your disposal this amazing computer, or whatever it is, that can think multidimensional on ever so many levels of things. Now, thousands of years ago, we don't know how far away.
I'm tired.
But people naturally trusted their minds.
Maybe I can switch the styles.
To tell them what to do. They didn't make decisions. They did what they felt. Or we should call it, they followed instinct. As animals do. Then they discovered how to figure. Through language and through numbers. They found that figuring could be very effective. And they started using it and relying on it more and more and more. And as a result of this, developed anxiety.
So here I lean.
Because when you don't figure, when you live purely spontaneously, you never write.
That time I did it. Felt better.
If this decision is disastrous, it's disastrous. And death will hit you in a hurry and you never know what it is. You don't spend all your time worrying about, did you make up your mind in the right way? And you see, that may lead to trouble. But the thing is that people don't realize is that everything leads to trouble in any case. If you develop the intellect and its calculation processes to an excessive degree, what do you have? Well, you have the weapons lab of the United States Air Force. You have the Russians, this, that, and the other, and the Chinese something else. You have planned disaster. If we leave it alone, which is what the Taoists mean, partly by no way or non-interference, there will still be troubles in the world, but you won't have to worry about it. And you will float along, and you will feel very free. And the question is to try and calm modern people living that way. Now, I'm putting this, you mustn't take me too literally. Because for a really well-developed human being, he isn't one who simply abandons people and plans. Because after all, that is some faculty that we have, in just the same way that a bird has a beak. And you don't want to, as it were, amputate your faculties. The point is rather something like this. We have to recognize the hierarchical situation of our faculty. That the thinking faculty is the servant of the larger mind, which doesn't need to think. Just as God, if I may use that expression again, if you ask him, how high is your mind? he wins. He would say, well, I really don't know. I'll have to measure it. Because to ask that question is to ask the relation of Mont Blanc to a ruler. Mont Blanc is not in itself any millimeters or meters in height. That is, what is this? Is simply a short way of talking about comparing it to the scale. And knowing what it is in height is the same thing as comparing it with the scale. So the Lord would have to say, I must get out my ruler. Just in the same way as you don't know how you do it, but you do it. So the Lord God creates the universe without knowing how it's done. That is to say, knowing in terms of technical considerations. But you still know how to breathe, even if you don't know how you do it, because you do it. That's knowing how to do it. You know how to walk. You know how to think? No problem. But they do it. So then, this unknown process produces the knowing process. But the knowing process is subordinate. And therefore you have to learn how to include thinking in spontaneity. But it's subordinate to spontaneity. That's when I wrote that thing in Broken about Suzuki. And ended with a quotation in which he described his own life as a thinker. Because he was an intellectual, he was a scholar. But he did scholarship in the spirit of spontaneity. He used thinking, he was not used by thinking. And when I say he, I'm referring to the mind beyond consciousness. Now the mind beyond consciousness, we discussed a little bit of this yesterday, that we call the self, with a capital S, is distinct from the ego. And I pointed out why the horoscope was traditionally considered to be the map of the soul, and that the body was in the soul, not the soul in the body. So the mind that I'm talking about is not merely your nervous system. If we will talk about it now in physical terms, it is not merely the nervous system, but it is the entire physical environment in which your nervous system exists and all the relationships operating within it. That's your mind. In other words, the kind of mind you have at this moment is impossible without your living in this kind of a society. Your mind includes the telephone book, the Encyclopedia Britannica, the University of California, and everything else going on, say, in the intellectual world. Every one of us exists in relation to
at the moment, I'm doing a style of Kung Fu called Xing Yi Chuan, or Xing Yi Chuan. And that's, I'm doing the motion of metal and water.
We didn't invent the English language. It was given to you as a result of a social enterprise going on for thousands of years. So in this sense, when you consult your mind, you are consulting the entire organization of the universe as it is immediately morally reflected in the structure of your nervous system and everything that your nervous system is doing, all the kinds of messages that are running through it. It is these messages that constitute the meaning. And so, this is what Buckminster Fuller means when he talks about synergy. S-Y-N-E-R-G-Y. Means from the Greek, synergos, working together, and he believes that any organization has more intelligence than any one of its members. And he therefore goes on to believe that in the industrial complex of communication systems covering the face of the earth is developing its own intelligence. And it will be much more intelligent than any one of us. And this may perhaps save the situation. I mean, one illustration of this is that I'm very familiar with is air transportation.
My arm is being torturous.
Now, every country in the world has invested a fortune.
What is bro doing? Training Kung Fu?
And by Jove, these things have to run. Otherwise, they fall apart. So they must run on time. And this network of air communications is joining every city in the world together, so that by 1968, according to government report, we have a one-town world. Figure it. If it takes you an hour to get from here to New York in a supersonic craft, New York is only as far away as Palo Alto. So that's practically in the same community. And this is going to include Tokyo and Moscow, and Paris and so on, and they're all going to become the same place. They'll speak increasingly the same language, share the same culture.
Something's off about it. I can feel it.
You can fly in San Francisco bread to Paris. You know, it can go the other way too. And we're going to share a common urban culture. And this is the work of Trinity. Also, the aircraft people get increasingly bored of passport and customs regulations because they hold up traffic. Well now, then,
That's the street. Keep the same height.
you might like to see how the Eugene is used. And I have here, in symbolic reasons, 3 ancient Chinese coins. You see that they have a square hole in the middle, and that on one side they're inscribed, and on the other side they're not. And the inscribed side is counted as the yin face, and the uninscribed side is counted as the yin.
That one's water. That's the motion of water.
And when you
Let's throw that out there.
use the book of changes, you usually face it with a question. And it seems
My
to
arm's
me that
being
this
difficult.
question that is not be faced with
My arm's being difficult for whatever
the
reason.
United States to adopt China. And you respectfully request the wisdom of the oracle in this matter, and you turn the coins down to see how they fall. And what I have is 1 yen and 2 yens. Now, strangely enough, that counts in the system, and I don't quite know why, as what's called the young yen. I think maybe I do know why. You would think it would be a yin, with 2 yens and 1 yen. But it counts as the young yen, and that's the bottom line of the headline. And by being a young yan, it means it's a fixed line. It doesn't change. Perhaps the reason why that's called the young yan is that when you've got 2 yins and 1 yang, it means the yin is weakening and the yang is coming up. Because when you reach a point at which the yin force comes to a maximum, there is in it the seed of the yang force, and vice versa. And you see, you have to do this 6 times to get 6 nines. And so this time you have 2 yangs and 1 yin, which gives us the young yin. And that again is a line that doesn't change.
We've been at it for at least 1 hour. Okay. Okay. I'll be back. I'm gonna go get some sleep. And then I'll be back with more martial arts or slow arts or even video games.
We get 2 yins and 1 yang. Gives us another yang. And we've made the hexagram of 4. No, 5. And this time you get 3.
And then you guys make sure to follow.
Gives us a
I do this and gaming and a bunch of other bullshit.
something like this.